Hi, I'm Brian, and welcome to my podcast. If you're looking for something to listen to or someone to keep you company, you have come to the right place. Let's talk about anything and everything under the sun here on How to Be Brian. Hi there, listeners. This is your homeboy Brian, and welcome to How to Be Brian, the podcast. This is the reflections and musings of a young adult on a pursuit to educate and live purposefully. If you're new here, then please do not forget to subscribe. But if you're an old subscriber or follower, then welcome. We meet again. Okay, so let's start this episode by saying that August has officially slipped away. So, can you believe it? August is done, and it was a really good month. And today is actually September 2. It is a Friday, and I'm in between some requirements and paperworks to finish, but I thought that it is the perfect time for me to record a new episode of the podcast because it's basically what happens when inspiration strikes you. You have to really satisfy that need to do something. And that's what I'm doing right now. So today I was supposed to record an episode about how August went for me. I mean, there are a lot of stories that I want to share to you to those who listen to the podcast, and I want to actually share how crazy this month has been. I mean, and August is actually a pretty memorable month for me. So I initially wanted to record an episode about it so that I can tell stories and share anecdotes to you, but recently I stumbled upon Curious Cat, and I don't know why, but for some odd reasons I decided not to create a Curious Cat account years ago when it was first trending. And I stumbled upon Curious Cat, and I suddenly remembered that I actually have an ask.fm account. So I don't know if you're familiar with ask.fm. I created this account, I think, when I was in high school or when I was in first year college. I'm not really sure when I created this account, but at the time it was the equivalent of Curious Cat, wherein anonymous people get to ask you questions, and then you also get to respond to them. And some of the questions that I got before are really interesting ones. So what I did was I logged in using my ask.fm account, and of course all my answers were there. The way I responded to the previous questions, they're all there. And I've had a great time going through my responses to the questions. There were questions about academics, there were questions about love and relationships and friendships as well. And I'm honestly in awe of how much my perspective in life has changed. I mean, my perspective in life in general really changed from how I view life when I was in high school and when I was in college. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to take some questions from ask.fm, and then I'm going to respond to them here on the podcast. So let's see how many questions I'll be able to answer given the time that we have for today. So let's start. Okay, let's start with a lighter question. The first question that we have is, what's your biggest pet peeve? Something that actually annoys me. Okay, there are a lot of things that annoy me, and literally, I'm the most irritable person that I know. So I get irritated very easily. But one of the things that constantly annoy me is that when people talk to you and you don't want to be chatted with. So I honestly get into that kind of mood when I just don't want to talk to anyone or I'm not willing to engage in conversations. But then again, it's very difficult when you're in that mood and you're surrounded by a lot of people. So people are going to socialize with you, initiate conversations with you, and they're not going to sense it right away that you're not in the mood for a conversation. So that's one of my pet peeves when people initiate conversations and I'm not in the mood to be chatted with, especially in the morning. I don't know why, but I like my mornings quiet, just me, coffee, and music and Bible verses. So that's how I like my mornings. And I don't want to be chatted with, at least for the first hour of my morning. So that's one of my pet peeves. And I really experience this one when it comes to attending family events. And you're just in the corner, and then people initiate conversations with you, and you're not even interested in talking to them. I'm sorry that I'm not interested in conversations like that, but I really choose where I allot my energy. And if it's just going to be small talk, just pleasantries, hi, hello, and so on, then I'd rather just keep quiet and not engage in conversation. But I'm trying to change it. I'm trying to be less grumpy, less irritable, and probably be more open to conversations when people initiate them. Hope I answered that question well. That's my biggest pet peeve, when people don't have that ability to tell if you're in for a conversation or not. Okay, next question is, paano mo i-approach ang isang atheist? I think before I answer this question, let's first identify what an atheist is, or what atheism is. So, an atheist is a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God or gods. So, basically, when you say that someone is an atheist, it means that that person does not believe in the concept of gods or concept of higher power. It means that the person does not recognize that there is a God governing over our lives, or there is a sovereign higher power that is in control of everything. So basically, atheists do not believe in God, and they believe more in probably the nature of things or the willpower of human beings. So that's what an atheist is. And I've actually had an encounter with an atheist, and this was an acquaintance that I met even before the pandemic. And in the middle of the pandemic, one of the ways by which I was able to cope with what's happening is to read the Bible and to harness this relationship with Christ that I'm still building. And it became evident in some of my relationships that I am harnessing my relationship with God. And so it is news to the people around me at the time that I started reading the Bible regularly. And one of my acquaintances at that time asked me why I started to read the Bible regularly and why I believe in God, because that person is an atheist and does not believe in God. And my response to the question of that acquaintance is that Christianity, or my religion, is the only worldview that made sense after believing in all different kinds of worldviews. I mean, I've tried believing in the power of the universe, the power of manifestation, horoscopes, even, and then maybe celestial bodies and how they affect our lives. But at the end of the day, it was only Christianity that made sense to me and answered my deepest questions, especially about my life. And that's the best thing that came out of my relationship with God, that I was able to answer those questions. And that's how I responded to that acquaintance's question. And to answer this question, paano mo i-approach ang isang atheist? I approach that person by, number one, recognizing and keeping in mind that that person, even if he or she does not believe in God, or in my God at least, that person is still my brother or sister in Christ. No matter how he or she identifies in terms of religious beliefs, I still see him or her as a child of God. And therefore, I know that the God that I worship and the God that I believe in takes care of him or her, loves him or her, or shows compassion and understanding to him or her. Therefore, who am I to judge that person based on their beliefs? And second, I also know that no matter how skilled I am into presenting my religious beliefs and my worldview to people, they will always have the freedom to disagree with me or create their own worldview. And I think that I respect them and their quote and unquote lack of religion the same way that I respect those from other religious groups. Basically, that's how I will approach an atheist or someone who does not believe in God. I will not try to convince them that there is God, but I will try to live a life that will show them how God moves in my life. And that I think is the best way to approach an atheist. That we can try to convince them and we can try to formulate these words and these ideas to make them believe in our God, but the best way to present them who God is the way we live our lives and the way that God moves in our lives. So that became my promise to myself, that I will live a life that is glorifying and pleasing to God, so that when other people see me and when other people get to know who I am, then they will know that I am a child of God, and that everything that happened in my life is, of course, because of the sovereign power of the God that I believe in. So I will not try to change their beliefs. If they don't believe in God, then I do respect that. But what I can do is to live a life that is glorifying to my God, so that when other people see it, they don't just see me as an individual, they see me as a child of God, and that they see God in all of the things that are happening in my life, and that they are always pointed to God. So that's how I will approach an atheist. So that's actually quite a deep question. Okay, let's move on to another random question. And this time it's about health protocols or the minimum health standards. And the question is, naiinis ka ba sa mga taong hindi nagfa-face mask? This is such a great question to ask. And to answer this one directly, yes, I get pissed off every time I see people who are not wearing face masks and people who are wearing face masks and not wearing them properly. This is the reminder to everyone who's listening to the podcast now. When you wear a face mask, it goes over your nose. It covers both your nose and your mouth. It does not just cover your lips and then exposes your nose. That's not how a face mask is supposed to be worn. So if you wear it and your nose is sticking out of the face mask, then it's still useless, because you can still be exposed to someone who is COVID-19 positive, and not wearing your mask properly is something that puts you to risk. And it also compromises your health and safety. And not just your health and safety, but also those of the people around you. So, again, this is just a reminder to everyone to wear a face mask and to wear it properly. And nowadays, it's also less strict. I mean, the health protocols are not strictly observed now, and people are more relaxed in terms of observing social distancing and then sanitizing as well. But I still want to err on the safe side. Basically, I still bring a bottle of alcohol with me all the time. I wear a mask all the time, every time I go out of the house. And then if I can bring an extra mask, I would also do that one, so I can change my mask from time to time. Or if I'm out for a really long time, I can change my mask after a few hours. And I honestly embraced wearing a face mask as a part of my outfit. If you follow me on Instagram, I make it a point to kind of use a face mask that matches my outfit's color. So that's something that I started doing in the middle of the pandemic, because I know that face masks are going to be around for a long time. And honestly, I'm not comfortable going out and being exposed to people without a mask. So I hope that everyone also follows these health protocols, even if we're vaccinated and we're boosted, because it still pays to follow all these protocols. Because, newsflash, there is still a pandemic and we could still be infected. So let's practice the minimum health standards. Okay, next question. Ako lang ba? Lumagpas na sa deadline na mare-receive ang Philippine National ID. Lagpas 2 months na eh. Update also, I haven't received my national ID just yet. I don't know when it will be arriving. I forgot to track it because I thought I was gonna receive it after a couple of months. I actually have mine processed more than a year ago. It's been a year since I have mine processed, and I haven't actually tracked it, but I haven't received a notification as well that it's ready to be delivered. So probably what I can do is to track my ID and trace where it is, because I think it will be really usable as well. So I'm seeing a lot of memes on Facebook that people are yet to receive their national IDs. And I saw a news report about it, I think a week ago, that the company that delivers the national ID is actually actively working on their deliveries. Therefore, once the ID is processed and once it's sent to them, they deliver it right away to the supposed recipients. So if that's the case, that the logistics of the ID is working on it, it could mean that maybe the ID itself is not yet processed. I actually don't know. I don't want to make conclusions about this one, but that's what I can say about it. So let's all track where our IDs are so that we can be aware on its process as well. Okay, another question. I think this is the fourth one for today. So the question is, name one Filipino toxic trait that you really hate. Okay, so I actually listed this one down as one of the possible topics for the podcast. I don't know why, but for some odd reasons, I just feel a little passionate about this, about the toxic traits that we have as Filipinos. And it's actually a very diverse topic. And I would like to dive deep into this topic about toxic Filipino traits, but I'll just give one to answer this question. So the one Filipino toxic trait that I actually really hate is the merit culture that we have in our families. So I've talked about this to some of my friends and my struggles with the merit culture. And this is not to hate on the Filipino families who practice this culture, but this is my reaction to the culture in itself. So I know that when you belong to Filipino families, your value or your worth somehow depends on the merit that you can bring into the family. So there always has to be a trademark for someone to be remembered in the family, because we know that extended Filipino families can be really big, and for you to be remembered and for you to be recognized and even acknowledged by your family or maybe some of your relatives, you need to have something special or unique about you. Like in Filipino families, they would always have the idea of, oh, eto si ganito siya yung matalino, or oh, eto si ganyan naman siya naman yung maganda, or siya yung gwapo sa family, or si ganito naman siya naman yung professional, siya yung nasa corporate world, or si ganito naman siya naman yung artist, siya naman yung pinaka-creative sa family. So sometimes our worth and our value depends on the merit or what we can bring to the family. If we're bringing in money to the family, financial support to the family, if we're bringing in maybe additional joy, love, and support to the family. And I want to say that that has a tendency to be toxic. So the reason why is because nowadays, young adults tend to do it all for their family. And I'm not saying that it's a negative thing to do it all for your family, but sometimes you have to remember that you also have your personal goals and dreams in life, and make sure that you're not pursuing things and doing things and going into jobs just because it will please your family. I mean, if it will please your family, but at the end of the day, your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health will be compromised just so they can be proud of you, and just so you can be this trophy child or this dream child that your parents or grandparents can flex during family reunions, then what's the point? Because they can be proud of you, but if you're not safe and healthy and happy with what you're doing just to please them, then it's still not worth it at the end. And I feel like that is the Filipino toxic trait that I hate the most. That if you cannot bring in something to the family, if you cannot contribute to the family's livelihood, and that, or if you don't work hard enough, if you don't study hard enough, then people are less likely to acknowledge or remember you. And it makes people do things that they're not voluntarily willing to do, just because they're trying to earn their family's appreciation. And probably another thing that's kind of related to that one is the concept of utang na loob. I just hate it when people wholeheartedly do things to help you, and then later on they use it to their advantage, and then they bring it up every time they need something from you, just so you will feel ashamed and you would feel the need to help them too, because during your struggling times or during the times when you were facing problems and difficulties, they were the ones who helped you. I mean, if you did something wholeheartedly, and if you do it out of love and unconditional love at that too, then you should not expect something like that to be reciprocated or equalized by the person who you did it to. So that's actually love. And that's actually what love is. It's about giving even without the concept of getting something out of it. And that's how you know that you genuinely love someone, that even if they don't return the favors from you, you still don't lose your fondness of them. And I honestly think that the concept of utang na loob also becomes a way of blackmailing other people into doing things that they're not willing to do, just because you're using the favor that you did for them against them now to elicit a response from them. So that's another toxic trait that I actually hate. So I can go on and on about these things, but I think I'll just do a separate episode about toxic Filipino culture in general. Well, I don't know if I'll be able to do it right away, but I'm looking forward to diving deep into that topic. Okay, and probably the last question for now is a question about internet love. So the question goes something like, naniniwala ka sa internet love? Ako kasi hindi. So I think that this is a question that refers to online dating in general. And I think this is a common term among millennials and Gen Zs, the term internet love, but I would like to refer to it as online dating. And personally, I haven't done online dating. I haven't installed any online dating apps. I haven't talk to anyone online with the intention of building a romantic relationship with them. And therefore, I can say that maybe online dating is not for me at this point. Well, who knows? Maybe in the future I'll try it, but now I don't think it's the kind of setup that will work for me. So the question is, naniniwala ka sa internet love? Okay, I would have to say that internet love is a possibility. Basically, because I have seen some of my friends meet their current partners through online dating apps, and I have known a few success stories out of online dating. And honestly, I'm happy for those people who met their partners through the internet or through dating apps. And I'm not against it. I mean, if it's your choice to go on dating apps and date around, then by all means, just grab that opportunity. But to answer this question, I'd like to say that online dating has to be supported or matched with actual and physical dating. Because if it's just online conversations and texting, chatting, video calling, there really is no way for you to get to know the person on a deeper level. So there has to be a physical aspect to it. There has to be an actual date and not just internet or online dates. So I guess it's true that internet love is really possible, but there has to be a human touch to it. Because if it's just an online setup, then I really don't think that building a deep connection with someone is possible if you don't see them in person. So you have to see them in person. That's what I suggest. So there has to be a human connection between two lovers, and that can only be built when you see each other in person, because that is the time when you get to see who the person really is, not just their physical bodies and faces, but also their personalities, their character, and their values in life. And I honestly think that finding love is not just based on the looks, based on the interests of a person. At one point or another, it will all boil down to how your values match, how your principles in life relate with one another's beliefs, and how that person shows their love and admiration or adoration for you. And those things cannot be measured through the internet. So if you guys are into online dating, I suggest that if you're really interested with the person that you're currently talking to, you need to meet with them if you really wish to build a romantic connection with them outside of the internet. So that answers the last question for today. And I've had so much fun recording this episode, and it's very interesting how diverse the topics are. So maybe I'll do this again soon. I'll answer more ask.fm questions. But in the meantime, you can ask questions to me using Ask FM. So the link to my profile is ask.fm slash Bryan Llamato. That's capital B, Ryan, capital Lamado. So I'll also type the link on the description box so that you can click it right away and ask me your questions. So that wraps up this episode of How to Be Brian the podcast, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again next time. That's it for this episode of How to Be Brian the podcast. If you like to continue the conversation, please do not forget to subscribe and follow me on my social media accounts. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Paalam!